Stephen Carroll. And Stephen, we're going to stay with our top story, the crisis in Ukraine. Markets around the world really sent into a tailspin on Monday. What's the picture today?
Well, just over an hour into trading in Moscow, the MICEX index has turned back into positive territory. It's up just over 2.5% in trading so far this morning. That's after the falls of almost 11% that we saw yesterday as investors fled Russian stocks. Gazprom, the Russian gas company, state-owned of course, was one of the biggest fallers on the index yesterday. It's back in positive territory too, up about 1.5% a few moments ago. Not anywhere near regaining those losses we saw yesterday, but certainly a different spin on things today. Anyway, the value of the Russian currency, the ruble, also back after hitting record lows against the dollar yesterday. It's fallen back slightly this morning, so the value of the ruble is increasing. This following the central bank's decision to raise the benchmark interest rate from 5.5 to 7%. Gold and oil, both things that spiked in value on Monday. They've fallen back slightly too as things have moved on. Over in Asia, slightly brighter picture on the markets today as well. Both the Hang Seng and the Nikkei in positive territory after the falls that we had seen on the markets yesterday.
OK, well, looking ahead to events later on today, Stephen, a delegation from the IMF heading to Kiev.
Yeah, they're to begin laying the groundwork for what's expected to be a $2 billion emergency loan for Ukraine. There'll be a special rapid financing deal agreed. This is what we're told to keep the country afloat. Ukraine officially wants $15 billion from the International Monetary Fund, but that's unlikely to be agreed before elections due to take place there in May. The IMF are going to demand strict reforms of the economy in exchange for their loans, though, including a possible privatisation of the oil and gas industries. Kate Moody has more.
The clock ticks down as Kiev waits for a financial lifeline. Ukraine's new prime minister has asked for at least $15 billion in loans and told a gathering of European business leaders he's ready to do whatever it takes.
An economy which lives on loans and does not create income will be catastrophic. That's why we will have to carry out the harshest reforms.
Those measures could include privatizing parts of the country's crucial oil and gas sector, as well as allowing the currency to float more freely, cutting state subsidies on household utilities, and reducing overall government spending by about 15%. Ukraine's debt stands around 45% of GDP. It owes a total $13 billion in state debt payments this year, and is paying up to 34% to borrow cash in the short term. It also owes the IMF $4.5 billion from a past aid program that was halted as promised reforms stalled. The IMF has already said it's ready to respond to Kiev's new requests for assistance, with the US and EU also set to contribute. While the international community may be prepared to act more quickly than usual, experts say it's not of the utmost urgency. The country still has some $15 billion in reserve, enough to cover its next big debt obligation, a $1 billion bond payment due in June.
OK, next we're going to look to the United States, where Barack Obama is getting out the calculator and laying out his budget plans.
Yeah, he's going to unveil full details for his 2015 budget later today. This is really just an exercise in laying out his hoped plans. There's very little chance of it being passed by Congress, but the outline of the plan will drop plans, to cut retirement benefits and will in turn seek new investment in infrastructure and in education. The president also wants to widen an income tax credit, which will cost around 60 billion euros. Now, of course, every budget battle in the United States is hard fought. This is only some showboating really by the president ahead of the midterm elections next year, but it does give us an idea of where his spending priorities will lie.
OK, let's turn now from economic news to companies news.
Yeah, we're going to start with the Australian government, which says that it wants to change the rules limiting foreign ownership of the national airline Qantas. The law currently limits foreign investors to holding up to 49% of the carrier's capital, but the move is opposed by opposition parties in Australia and isn't likely to pass a Senate vote. Qantas is cutting 5,000 jobs after announcing losses of $210 million in the second half of 2013. The crowdfunding website Kickstarter says it's raised more than $1 billion for creative projects to date. The company announced the milestone had been passed late on Monday. High-profile projects funded through the site include a Veronica Mars movie and plans to bring the novel American Psycho to the London stage. And Microsoft founder Bill Gates is back on top of Forbes' billionaires list. His $76 billion fortune won him back the top spot from Mexican telecoms entrepreneur Carlos Slim. Forbes magazine says a record 1,645 billionaires made the list this year, 200 more than in 2013.
Goodness
2012
me.
rather.
Well, I wonder how many of those billionaires live in the world's most expensive city. Tell us which city it is.
Which is Singapore, according to a World Cost of Living survey by the Economist Intelligence Unit. It came out on top of 131 cities surveyed. Its strong currency reliance on imports, and particularly the high cost of transport, pushed it up the rankings. It's also the most expensive place of the cities surveyed to buy clothes. Perhaps some advice if you're going travelling there, buy them before you go. The study examines 400 different prices across various cities. Let's take a look at what the top 5 rankings were. Singapore coming in on top. Paris number 2 though, followed by Oslo, Zurich and Sydney in Australia. Asian and Australian cities moving hugely up the rankings this year, largely because of their strong currencies, it has to be said. One interesting statistic though, Paris, of the top 10, the most expensive place to buy a litre of petrol, but the second cheapest to buy a bottle of wine after Geneva.
So maybe those two statistics, when you put them together, that kind of works out. You could...
It's a lifestyle choice, really. Perhaps you should drink wine and not drive a car.
Exactly. Just stay on your terrace drinking some wine cheaply. That's very nice news. Thanks very much. Stephen Carroll there with the latest business news here on France 24. We're going to move on now to take a look at the top stories getting us tweeting and liking on the internet, including Kate Middleton and Audrey Hepburn covered in tattoos. Find out more in Web News.
On Sunday, Ukrainian hackers targeted the website of